Hey everyone, and welcome. So you've done it. You've put in the hours, you've trained an awesome machine learning model, and it's working beautifully. But now you're facing the big question. How do you get this thing out of your notebook and into the real world where it can actually start doing some good? Well, that's called deployment, and in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how to pull it off in Azure Machine Learning. I just love this quote because it completely nails the journey we're talking about today. We're taking our model and graduating it, moving it from being just a cool science experiment into a real, live business product. This is that critical leap from research to reality. And that's exactly what we're here to do. We're going to give you a clear, super practical framework to guide you through the big choices you have to make to get your model deployed successfully using Azure Machine Learning. So here's our game plan. First up, we're tackling the big one. Do you need real-time or batch processing? Then, for those real-time services, we'll figure out where your model should live, ACI or AKS. After that, we'll get into automating the whole shebang with pipelines. And to wrap it all up, we'll test what we've learned with some exam-style questions. Let's dive in. All right, our very first decision point, it's all about timing. You really just have to ask yourself one simple question. How fast do I need the answer? Seriously, your answer to that question is going to shape your entire deployment architecture. And what's so great about this is how clearly it shows the two main paths you can take. Over on the left, you've got real time. This is all about instant gratification. We're talking answers in milliseconds, like when a banking app needs to check a credit score right now. But on the right, you have batch. This is for when you need to process a mountain of data. And speed isn't the number one priority, like scoring 1 million customers for a marketing campaign overnight. The goal here isn't instant speed, it's all about throughput. So, for real-time, the setup is actually pretty slick. Your model and everything it needs to run gets bundled up into a Docker container. Azure then takes that container, hosts it, and puts a REST API in front of it. That means any application can just send it some data and get a prediction back almost instantly. The real brains of the operation is your entry script, usually a file called score.py, that has all the logic to load up the model and make the predictions. Now, for batch, it's a completely different beast, built for massive scale. Azure ML has this brilliant tool for this called the parallel run step. What it does is it takes your enormous data set, automatically chops it up into smaller, manageable chunks, and then spreads that work out across a whole cluster of computers. It's an incredibly efficient way to just chew through terabytes of data. Okay, so we've covered the what. Let's talk about the where. Let's say you've decided to go the real-time route. Now you've got another big choice to make. Where is this API for your model actually going to live? This is all about picking the right home, the right compute target for the job. And honestly, this table right here, this is your cheat sheet. It lays out your options perfectly. You've basically got 3 choices. First, Azure Container Instances, or ACI. Just think of this as your dev and testing sandbox. Second, Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS. This is the big one, your high-scale, secure production powerhouse. And third, you can always run it local, but that's really just for debugging on your own machine before you even think about the cloud. So here's the rule of thumb, and this is super important. ACI is your best friend for the early stages. It's fast to set up, it's cheap, and it's the perfect place to iron out all the bugs in your code and your container before you even think about going live. It's your pre-production playground. But when it's time to get serious, AKS is the only way to go. If your app is going to be used by real customers, if it needs to handle crazy traffic spikes with auto-scaling, and if it needs solid security, well then AKS is the non-negotiable choice. It's built for the demands of a real business product. Okay, so our model is deployed. Great! But what happens next week when we get new data? Or next month when we want to improve the model? We don't want to go through all those steps by hand all over again. And that, my friends, is where MLOps and automation come in. The core tool for this is the Azure ML pipeline. A pipeline might sound complicated, but at its heart, it's really just a series of steps that you connect together. You can see it right here. It's just a logical flow. First, you prep your data, then you train your model, and finally, you evaluate it and register it. By turning this into code, you get a workflow that's reusable, versioned, and totally automated. It's all about consistency and reliability. Now, this is a really cool part. Once you publish a pipeline, you can trigger it with a REST endpoint. But what happens when you create a new, better version of that pipeline? Well, that's where the pipeline endpoint becomes your secret weapon. It's basically a permanent, stable URL that sits in front of your pipeline. You can swap out the pipeline version running in the background as many times as you want, and any app that calls it never has to change its address. It's an incredibly powerful way to handle updates seamlessly. All right, we've gone over the core ideas. Now let's make sure this stuff really sticks by putting our decision framework to the test with a couple of real-world scenarios. Think of these as a warm-up for a certification exam. Okay, scenario 1. We're building a service for a banking app. Now, the keywords you gotta latch onto here are real-time, requires authentication, and must auto-scale. This is obviously a serious business-critical production application. So, with those requirements in mind, what's the right choice? Which compute target are you going to pick? Is it ACI or is it AKS?
And the answer is, of course, number 2, Azure Kubernetes Service. And why is that? Well, if you remember our little cheat sheet, only AKS gives you those production-level features. It's got the security, it's got the auto-scaling, things ACI just wasn't built for.
Let's do one more. You've been working hard, and you've created a new, much better version of your training pipeline. The only problem is there's another application that triggers it, and the developers of that app are telling you they absolutely cannot change the URL they're using. It's hard-coded. So how do you solve this puzzle? What's the right move here? Do you update something called the pipeline endpoint? Or do you just delete the old pipeline and publish the new one? The elegant and correct solution is to update the pipeline endpoint. This is precisely the problem it was designed to solve. It's that stable front door that lets you just point it to your new pipeline version. The other application has no idea anything even changed. It's a perfectly seamless update. And there you have it, a clear framework for taking your model from a simple experiment all the way to a robust automated product in the real world. But deploying the model, that isn't the end of the story. The world is always changing, and so is your data. Which brings us to the next big challenge. Once your model is live, how do you keep an eye on it to make sure it's still doing its job well? But we'll save that for another time. Thanks for joining me on this one.